Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm super fired up for this guest. Tonight, we have with us the 1989 Illinois High School State Singles Champion and a two-time Team State Champion in 1987 and 1988 at New Trier High School in Winnetka, Illinois. He played collegiately at Notre Dame, where his 1992 team finished second in the NCAAs. And in his 12 years as the Boys Varsity Coach at New Trier High School, he has amassed 11 team trophies, including 3 state team championships. He was supposed to be concluding his 13th year at the time of this recording, yet obviously this season was taken away because of COVID-19. However, we are still happy and thrilled to welcome Coach Tad Eckert to the pod. Coach, thanks, man. You doing all right?
I am. Yeah, tennis is opening up here in Illinois, so there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's been just a brutal spring.
Yeah, and I know, and we were talking about it, I constantly heard the disappointment in your voice because I know the passion you have and how you so look forward to each spring. You guys, you're at an incredible high school. You're always in the hunt for playing for highest of stakes. And, you feel horrible for the kids, whether it's college seniors, whether it's high school seniors. Those life moments, it's really disappointing. You hope those people can somehow, I don't know, learn from it somehow and have bigger and better things ahead of them.
Yeah, I think, living for the moment, right, and just appreciating all those opportunities that you have. Maybe that's the perspective that we'll get out of this. But it's certainly like upheavaled our whole life, right? I mean, I would be checking the sectional results right now on the computer, wondering who were the state qualifiers. Instead, right. I'm talking to you. It's not a bad back.
That's a down tick.
We're used to doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'd be talking to the matches, but yeah, I know you and I are friends, but I know you'd much rather be coaching your team, and I'd much rather be coaching my team. But this will have to do for a decent consolation. So.
True.
You got a heck of a tennis journey, so let's go and get started. We'll bring you up to current, obviously, but you have quite a story. So I'll let you kind of start with how you got involved in the sport,
Sure.
Whether your parents kind of pushed you or siblings or whatnot.
Well, my parents met on a tennis court in Oak Park, Illinois, so I guess I was kind of destined to play the game and kind of started fiddling around with them, when I was young, age 2 or something, and then got a little more serious. When I was about 7, I got introduced to Jerry Karzan, and he was my first real private instructor. And what a great guy to have as pro number 1 in your life, North Shore Racket Club guy and Wimbledon player and father-son champion, over and over and over. So he really started me off getting a little more serious about tennis. And then I started going out to Aurora with Jack Sharp when I was about 12. Met some of the better players around the area, and they were playing out there, recommended him, so started going out to the Aurora Tennis Club with that whole cast of characters all the way through high school, and then had the opportunity to play for some really Hall of Fame coaches. And I think that's really helped my development and gave me a leg up when it came to coaching and gave me a real taste of what's possible with coaching. So I played for Coach John Schneider at New Trier, and he won 700 plus basketball games, but also like 5 or 6, 7, I don't know, more than me, state championships in tennis. He was my coach for those 2, and then played for a true Hall of Famer who he got inducted recently, and he just wrote a book, Coach Bobby Beilinson at Notre Dame. And then my assistant there happened to be Brian Calbus, who I'm sure someday will be in the Hall of Fame because he's just dominating at North Carolina, coaching the women's program. So, if you pay attention with those kind of people, it's not too hard to, kind of take notes on how to run your own program. And so I'm just using most of their material, but really have a passion for coaching, like you said in the introduction. And it's been a really rewarding experience, for me. And I think I've given some good lessons to the kids. We're at a unique age in high school where they're really transitioning. And I think it's a good fit for me personally.
Yeah. And I don't want to, omit any of these important facts. For those that don't know Tad, he had quite a junior career, including, as I said in the intro, Illinois High School State champion. And you played a guy in the finals, I believe, who you had relatively little or no success against in the past. Is that true?
That's right. Paul Pridmore was one of the West Aurora, the powerhouse, that's not even on the map anymore in high school tennis because Jack was out there. And he and Jimmy Panagopoulos, who was 1 year below, were like arch rivals in high school tennis. And so I was actually unseeded or not seeded in the top 8. They only published 8 seeds back then. And kind of just worked my way through the draw. I beat Panagopoulos in the round of 16 and beat 2 other seeds. So I got to the finals and had to play Pridmore, who I had never beaten in my whole life. But we had played a lot together, so there was a little bit of a comfort there. But there wasn't a whole lot of confidence, to be honest with you. But, that things broke my way, and I just got hot on one weekend. You see that on, like, the PGA Golf Tour, right? A golfer gets hot,
right?
And he Tiger Woods, right? So, that was kind of my story in high school, and it kind of gives hope that if you really have the passion for high school tennis, work hard and get hot at the right time, kind of anything's possible. And that's what I try to preach to my guys. But Paul and I were really good friends. We played national doubles, in the 18s. We got to the quarters of the clay courts and stuff. So it was a friendly rivalry, but I think I was 1-in-14 lifetime against him. So
wow, but you'll take that one win, I'm sure. So
yeah, he got it next year, and then Panagopoulos got it the year after. So Jack coached 3 separate kids that won back-to-back state championships.
Yeah, incredible.
You see that a lot with one guy winning multiple, but rarely 3 guys from the same pro development program kind of winning in a row like that. So it's a good story.
For sure. And then you continued on your career at Notre Dame. You had really, really good teams. Or what did you finish second? You finished second in the NCAAs one year, right?
Yeah, I didn't play very much because we were so good. But I did play a lot that year. One of the guys got hurt in doubles. So during the year, I was like 9-1 at number 3 doubles. But our team was incredible. We had Dave DeLucia, who was the number 1 player in the country at the time. And he and Chuck Coleman were like number 1 in doubles. So we just had a gangbuster team. And that was another case of like, David kind of taking down Goliath. We beat Georgia and USC and then lost to Stanford in the finals, but it was little Notre Dame, the Midwest school, getting to the finals of the NCAAs. And it was really, just a special thing to be a part of.
Yeah, that's sweet. So you had some high school and then high school career and then some awesome college experiences. You kind of already answered this previously, but we'll dive into it maybe a little bit more. When you started to transition into coaching, you've talked, I was going to say, who are some of your main influences as coaches? You've kind of touched on that, but I'll ask you, how do you go about forming your practice plans? Again, tennis is tricky because it's an individual sport. When it's one-on-one out there, obviously you're talking singles, obviously doubles, 2-on-2, but what is your type of motto, making sure all kids are on the same page with what that team is trying to accomplish? That's something you're playing bigger than just yourself.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really unique parts about coaching high school tennis is for a lot of these kids, it's their first real team experience. And I know the USTA has got some plans to incorporate more team action into their development. But unless you're at the top of the Midwest or the top of the Chicago district, you don't get very many USTA team opportunities. So in high school tennis, realistically, like the kids new to varsity, it's just trying to get them to learn that it's not always all about themselves and that there's a bigger unit out there, and that's the team, and how we can help each other to get to where we want to be at the end of the season. Nice. Teamwork and just selflessness and, just the right attitude and kind of getting the parents away from them a little bit. I think those are all real positive things for high school tennis and for the development of kids. Not that they're going to go on to, play professionally or even in college necessarily, but just to become more independent and learn that there's a framework out there where they can feel like they're part of something as opposed to just being out on an island like they've been at USTA a lot.
Nice.
And then, and then like, if, lesson wise and my practices, I remember being at the Illinois Coaches Conference one time, and Bob Beilinson was one of the speakers, and he started doing these drills, and I was like, oh my God, like this is where all my drills come from. Like I thought like I created some like great drills and everything, But really, I was just using all of his stuff because the thing to the conference, and I was like, I use every one of those drills. So
coaches in every sport, coaches steal from each other.
Earlier, like, those guys have had a lot of success. Jerry, Jack, Bob Bayless, Calbus, Schneider, right? So it's just kind of taking bits and pieces from all of those guys, within your own personality. But we're fortunate at New Trio too. It's a high level tennis program. You're not teaching kids how to hold a racket. So I really focus on strategy more than, technique.
Right.
I really like to do situational things in practices. So rarely do I let people play points without restrictions. Like I can remember when I had Steinman and Hiltzik, and they were, 1-2 in the state, and some reporters had asked me like, hey, well, what happens in practice? I'm sure they play every day. Like, what are the scores? Like, what do you think's going to happen? And I said, honestly, I don't think I've let them play one time all season where there haven't been rules, and that rule might be, okay, Robert only gets to hit second serves, or the rule might be, okay, Jared has to look to attack his forehand, or the rule might be if Jared comes to that, Robert has to hit a lob or something. So there's always some little restriction in the game to focus on what you really want as a coach, because if you don't stifle them a little bit, they're just going to keep playing the same way.
Yeah.
I get that you can improve your strengths, but in high school, there's a lot of weaknesses that need to be developed too. So putting in some of those rules, incorporating some of those rules really helps people focus on what they need to work on.
Yeah. And you said, you're at a big high school and they have a good tennis program. And I want to kind of talk about some of your, I'll quote unquote call them first world problems. And in Illinois high school tennis, we're limited to having 2 singles entries and 2 doubles entries to compete in sectionals, in which if they place in the top 4 spots, they then qualify for the state tournament. And, you've been privileged to have some unbelievable teams. And I want to ask you, I think one of the hardest decisions you ever have to make is when you have to tell a kid that you're not going to be placed in our sectional lineup, when realistically that kid can go to 90% of the other high schools in the state and they'll be 1, 2, or whatever. They'll easily qualify for that school's sectional lineup. That's got to be a tough call to make. How do you go about that and process that with that individual?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more difficult even with us because we're so spread out during our season. Like I split our squad a lot. And so people don't really have a great feel for where they are in the lineup because we might have 2 teams playing simultaneously. So that means 2 kids are playing number 2 singles. But maybe neither one of them is actually a number 2 guy, right? So it's not really clear during the season, which I think helps because everyone feels like they're in it. But I do think when you rip the Band-Aid off, the first Band-Aid off is at conference, right? When you're down to only 11 guys, right? And we don't double up that weekend. So now I'm going from 16 or however many I had on varsity to my 11. And then the bigger Band-Aid is at sectionals, right? Where we have to reveal our top 6. And it's just developing those mostly doubles teams during the season. But you also have to be reactive too, because injuries happen and sometimes it's like a risk tolerance thing. It's like, do you want to play it safe and get third or kind of barely get a trophy, or do you want to just like come up with something crazy like lineup wise and go for the title, even though it might not work, right? So we've had all different kind of permutations over the years, but the kids, I like to say that lineup decisions are made on the court. And I ask the kids a lot of survey questions during the season. Initially I like to put people who like to play doubles together or want to play doubles together and see how they do, because we've got enough really good guys on our team that I shouldn't put them with somebody they don't like, right? And then it's like sink or swim for them, right? So if they're doing well and they like each other, that's the perfect situation, right? If they're not doing well and they like each other, well, then I might split them up, right? I mean, but even if they don't like each other, but they're doing well, I might keep them together, right? But, it's just a feel, and you got to feel the state landscape too, the way our state tournament is and points and seeding and things like that. But I say I like to have lineup decisions made on the court And historically, like our surveys, I asked the kids, what should our state lineup be? And they almost all agree with what we submit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I like to give them a voice. It's not necessarily like I'm going to go with exactly what they say, but I like to see what they're thinking throughout the year and how that evolves. And I think that helps us get all on the same page a little bit more for sectionals. But, you know,
Yeah.
I've had it revealed, the lineup revealed at the section, like the day before sectionals, and I've had kids leave that room and not come to the banquet, and I've never seen them again.
Yeah.
So, you know,
and you lived it in college, right? You were just out of that lineup in the NCAAs.
And I say that for our team on our lexicon, you know, lineup decisions are made on the court is on there. But another one that's important that's on there is the seventh man is the most important member of the team. And the seventh man is the guy who just didn't make that sectional lineup or that state lineup. And if he's on board and really with the team concept, then you really got a chance and you got something special. And if that guy's going to leave the room and pout and never come back, well, then your team wasn't really that close-knit throughout the season. So that guy's in a precarious position, right? And it's up to him. He can try and groundswell everybody who's not in the top six against the coach, like the coach doesn't know what he's talking about, or he can really get behind the six guys who are going and try and make them better, because quite frankly, we can get a lot done in those 2 weeks between after conference and state, right? Because there's no distractions, there's no matches, and we know who we have finally in the lineup, so we can really work on developing them and maxing out their performance.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I'm sure you've had experiences where you've had maybe someone play in the sectional lineup their sophomore and junior year. Now the kid's a senior, but you got 3 unbelievable freshmen coming in, and, you know, just like you said, it's decided on the court, whatever. You have to tell a senior that, you know what, you didn't quite make it this year. And I know that's the worst part of being a coach. But like you said, then it's up to that senior to either, you know, get really upset and walk out and you'll never, you know, badmouth the coach and never see him again. Or like you said, that senior then becomes the most important part of the team. And that 7th guy, he will rally everybody else that you've had, 16 guys you said, the other remaining guys that haven't played. And then you said you may have something special. So it's not a fun position to be in, but like I said, it's kind of first world problems at New Trier High School.
Right. It shows your character, though. Like when things are going easy and you're winning at number 1 doubles, you know, it's pretty easy to be happy, right?
Right.
But if you're the guy just off the bubble, you know, that's a real test of your character. And the one guy who did it is this guy, Mahir Wag, who ended up going to Northwestern. And he actually teaches in my group that I run from my 7th grader. So, like, he's been the model guy from the second long before that announcement was made, but he got it, he still gets it, and we're still close, right? And his brother's awesome. So it's up to the person, really, you know. And as coaches, what I try and tell them is we're just trying to do what's best for the team. I mean, really, that's what I'm doing every day. What is best for the team? And that might not be best for you, but I'm always focused on what is best for the team.
Right.
And they don't always have that perspective. I hope I have that perspective all the time. I know I don't all the time, but that's really the goal, right? What's best for the team?
For sure. Just want to ask you, both as a player when you played and as a coach, give me 1 or 2 of your proudest moments.
Well, I mean, as a coach, I think that for me, it really started with Tom and Jared over at Loyola. When Coach Fitzgerald let me kind of take the reins for these 2 little freshmen. Let's see, that would have been in like 2004. And the first year, they barely qualified for state. The second year, they qualified and won a couple matches. The third year, they upset a seed and then flamed out in the back draw, actually, to get against GBN. And then their senior year, they were seeded.
Shout out GBN, by the way. Shout out GBN.
Exactly.
Thanks.
They were seeded top 8 and lost in the round of 16. And the year before, we had gotten to the quarterfinals and taken a set off of the number 1 seeds that won the whole tournament. So they had like really high aspirations. And we lost in the round of 16, but worked their way through the back draw and ended up getting 6th place state medalists. And Coach Fitzgerald really gave me the reins to that team for those 4 years. So that kind of proved to me that I was capable of making something happen. Yeah, out of kids that, you know, weren't super awesome tennis players at the beginning, but they really bought in, and so they're on the top of my list, those two. So that was a great coaching moment, you know, and then, you know, winning is always fun, but the journey and the experience is what really where the story is. And that's the shame of the season. You know, we just don't have a story to tell.
Right.
It might not have been like a happy ending. It might not have been like everyone's greatest, proudest moment, but we would have had a story, and we always have a story. I mean, I feel like the state tournament is a novel in itself usually, but the whole season is such a great story. You can always find something rewarding out of it, and that's what didn't happen this season. So that's a little disappointing. Then playing wise, you know, I won the qualifier, the CDTA qualifier, all 4 years. So that's not something that everybody does. 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. So that was a good accomplishment. Obviously, winning the singles, but those 2 team titles really whet my appetite for being part of something special team wise. And that was when I was a freshman and a sophomore. So, you know, that really got me hooked on high school tennis. And, you know, even before that, I was riding in Jerry Carson's van to the state tournament when I was in 7th and 8th grade. So just being around that whole, you know, spectacle is just really motivating. So.
Yeah. And the next thing I wanted to ask you about was high school tennis. And I obviously I've known you for a number of years now. I see the passion. You love it. Open up a little bit about the good and the bad. And you could even talk about, you know, we have several kids and gosh, I remember back to 2015 when the state was so ridiculously deep. And we had 2 guys, one guy on, it was 2 guys on your team that didn't even play that year. I mean, we had just so the listeners know, our state semifinalists was Ohio State, Virginia, Dartmouth, Vanderbilt, Northwestern came in 5th. These are high school players that went to these colleges. You had 2 guys, Illinois and Stanford, who didn't even play high school tennis. Talk a little bit about the good and the bad of playing high school tennis.
Well, I mean, I think for most people, I think it's all good. I especially think that kids should try it once. I think it would be a shame to kind of go 3 or 4 years without trying it. That's kind of my big preach to the kids who are on the fence, who are thinking maybe I should just stick with my private coach. You know, will I lose USTA or UTR opportunities or points? But I mean, to have that experience of being part of your school and playing for a team, it's unique, right? And you might not get it in college, you know, or you might not get it. It's not going to be the same, that's for sure. So I think trying it 1 year and seeing how it goes, and then I get it. If you didn't like it, if you don't like me, you know, is high school tennis really going to change that much year to year? I mean, there's different faces, right, and different players.
Right.
But it's kind of the same fun and content. And I'm not like evolving like into some Martian, right, year to year. So I'm trying to improve myself as a coach, but I'm kind of realistically kind of the same, right? So if you didn't like me or you didn't like the experience, I'm not going to promise you it's going to be something totally new and different the next year. But if you're sitting on the sidelines and you've never played, I really think you should come out and see what it's about, especially if you're thinking about playing in college. Because nowadays, with all the homeschooling, I think one of the challenges of college coaches, and you would know because you talk to them more than I do, even though I have a lot of guys I used to play with are coaches now, but getting a homeschooled kid to buy into a team is like a totally unique challenge, right? Because my kids are 8th graders or freshmen when they start being on a team. That's 4 more years where they've been on their own, right? Or really even more isolated. They're not even in a school. And then they've got to learn how to be part of a team or a team practice. I mean, wow, that's going to be challenging. So I think it can prepare you for the next level. You know, maybe not on the court, but maybe some of the other stuff, you know, the touchy-feely stuff that's going to make you a better teammate in college.
Yeah, you're doing these transitions for me. So this is great. The next thing that I wanted to go into it with you is you've had incredible success at New Trier. And obviously it's a tennis powerhouse. It's a great school academically. There's had to be at least maybe, I don't know, in the back of your mind, maybe saying to yourself, you know what? do I maybe want to do this at the collegiate level? You obviously played at the collegiate level. You played at a very high level college in collegiate tennis. Has there been some opportunities, either they seeking you or you've wanted to say, you know what, let's maybe try this at even a higher level?
I don't think they're really looking at high school coaches, to be honest with you. In fact, I've been surprised that a lot of the coaches don't reach out to me when they're evaluating some of the players. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And I think that's interesting because I think you can learn a lot about a kid through their high school tennis experience. But I think that the coaching pipeline, if you really want to be a college coach, I think you got to be an assistant somewhere in college and kind of work your way up through that. Now, I mean, would it be interesting? Would it be fun? Sure, it would, but it would be a lot of work too. And I've got a manufacturing company that I'm running, and so high school tennis is a nice little side gig. It's really my passion, right? But it doesn't pay the bills, okay? Right. And I think that college coaching is just, those guys work really hard, and I know a lot of them pretty well. They work really hard, and the recruiting is something that, I mean, I've never done. Well, I don't know if I've never done. I recruit in the hallways of New Trio to try and come out for our team, but I'm not flying to like Belarus or like Croatia and watching YouTube videos of some Russian and trying to decide if they can play on my team, right? I'm going into a kid's advisory and telling them, it's a lot of fun to play high school tennis. So it's rather than talking about how much money I'm going to give them and how many pro tournaments I get them in, before they graduate. So it's a whole different animal. And those guys are running really high level practices, intense practices. I always tell my kids, like, you don't think I'm nice? Like, I am so nice. Wait till you get to college.
Right.
Like, you'll find out how nice I am. They come back and most of them are like, yeah, you were right. You weren't very mean at all. It's like my college coach, because, it's their livelihood. They're depending on the performance of an 18 to 22-year-old, you know? And it's just more important, right?
Yeah.
It's more important for them. For me, it's a lot of fun. And believe me, I take it super seriously. And I like to win, and I like to have a good time with the kids and really create the team thing. And it's really important to me, but it's not like their livelihood. And depending on 18 to 22-year-olds, man, that's tough because there's such little room for error, right? There's some of these squads only carry 7-8 guys, right? Yeah. And they're playing 6. So you're one injury away or one missed recruiting away from like not meeting any of your goals. It's just brutal.
Well, let me flip it.
We can always blame who. Well, no, we don't have good players living in our town. Not my fault,
Yeah. Well, generally you don't have that problem, but I will say this. Let me flip it around this way. Would there be any interest, and I'm not saying, and this would be way, way down the road maybe, of going to a school that may not have the size of a New Trier, the history and the tradition of a New Trier, and building a program from the ground up?
For sure. I think that is more intriguing to me than going to the college level. So, there's some teams in our conference, right, who have one hit wonders sometimes. They have like one good player. But it would be a really good experiment to try and take a town, right, and start early with kids and then see how it happens. And I'm kind of doing that with my little guy because I've been teaching him since he was 9, and I've gotten some of the New Trier kids together that have lived in the district, and they're coming in next year as freshmen. So I know these kids really well, and it's been a little experiment to see, like, can we get the team cohesiveness built earlier so that we're not just learning who we are and what that's all about in high school tennis. So the next 4 years, we'll really figure it out. The 8th graders that right now are coming in next year, I've started with them since they were about 9, and then my guys are behind them. But yeah, taking a small town or small school and getting a bunch of Tom and Jareds, right, who you can just take under your wing and they really buy in. I mean, that would be awesome. I would be totally into that. And quite honestly, the coaches that I have a ton of respect for have done that in the past or are doing that right now. I mean, you look at some of these places like Metamora, right, or Edwardsville, you know, who aren't necessarily like big tennis powerhouses, and they've had great teams recently because of their coaches. And then you look at some of the teams that were really strong when I was playing, like Bloomington or West Aurora, and they're not even on the qualifying for state anymore because the coach who did it all isn't there anymore, right? So in a community like that, you can have such an enormous impact. And I think that that's undervalued in our sport. You know, Hinsdale wins the title and we have the state medalists and this and that, right? But those guys are really the ones who are developing tennis and really doing something like remarkable for the game in communities that otherwise wouldn't experience it at all.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And myself, associated with the Glenbrook North boys program, you at New Trier, we've had our battles, and it's been so fun. And you, like you said, you want to win bad, we want to win bad, but we've always had, at least I'll say this, I've always had the most ultimate respect for you and what you do. And like you said, we're both smiling now. This is going to be audio. We may upload this to YouTube, but we have so much fun. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. We're lucky to have good kids, not only on the tennis court, outside the tennis court as well, but we've also been blessed to have some pretty decent tennis players as well. And
I say New Trier is going to win a lot more than they lose, no matter who's coaching. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? So try and make a difference in other ways sometimes. And you guys are doing a great job at GBN too. I mean, I've all these coaching friends I've missed this season too, right? We haven't seen each other. You know, the band is half the fun and telling the stories, and you know, we missed out on that. But you know, really feel for the kids.
Yeah, I know.
You know, especially those seniors, and then the kids who are new to varsity who just missed out on the experience. It's just a shame, but I think it's the right thing to do. And tennis taking some baby steps, getting back. You know, that's encouraging. So it gives us a little hope.
Yeah, for sure. Hey man, this was fun. I wanted to get you on for a while, and I appreciate your time. Obviously, we would have liked to see each other on the court this spring. It didn't happen. We'll get there next year, but you have such a good story, and you have so many cool experiences. Thank you for taking time today and sharing that with us.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, man.